5. Okay. Gauranga. This school today. First day back. Good luck. May Krishna bless your school. You do Hare now at lunchtime? Jai Radha Motovo Kunjam Bihari Radha Motovo Kunjam Bihari Gopi Jan Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jan Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari He Radha Motova Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Motova Kunjam Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Motovo Kunja Bihari. Hey Radha Motovo Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupada, Paramahamsa, Paragrajikacharya, Ashtatala Sata Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Śrīmad Prabhupada ki, Anantakoti Vaishnava Brinda ki, Grantaraj, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Nitai Go Premananda. All glories is some devotees, all glories is some devotees, all glories is some devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, chapter entitled Ambarish Maharaj Offended by Durvasa Muni, text number 55. Pratyakyata virinchena Vishnu chakro patapita Durvasa sharanam yata Sharvam kailasha vasinam Pratyakyato virinchena Vishnu chakro patapita Durvasa sharanam yata Sharvam kailasha vasinam Pratyakyato virinchena Vishnu chakro patapita Durvasa sharanam yata Sharvam kailasha vasinam. Mataji's. pratyakyata, being refused. Virinchena, by Lord Brahma. Vishnu Chakra Upatapa, being scorched by the blazing fire of Lord Vishnu's disk. Durvasa, the great mystic named Durvasa. Sharanam, for shelter. Yata, went. Shavam, unto Lord Shiva. Kailasavasinam, the resident of the place known as Kailasa. Translation and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīmad Prabhupada. When Durvasa, who was greatly afflicted by the blazing fire of the Sudarshana Chakra, was thus refused by Lord Brahma, he tried to take shelter of Lord Shiva, who always resides on his planet known as Kailasa. Translation responsibly. When Durvasa, who was greatly afflicted by the blazing fire of the Sudarshana Chakra, he was thus refused by Lord Brahma. He tried to take shelter of Lord Shiva, who always resides on his planet, known as Kailasa. Text 56. Lord Shiva said, "My dear son, I, Lord Brahma, and the other demigods who rotate within the universe under the misconception of our greatness cannot exhibit any power to compete with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For innumerable universes and their inhabitants come into existence and are annihilated by the simple direction of the Lord." Purport. There are innumerable universes in the material world, and there are innumerable Lord Brahmas, Lord Shivas, and other demigods. All of them rotate within this material world under the supreme direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, no one is able to compete with the strength of the Lord. Lord Shiva also refused to protect Durvasa, for Lord Shiva also was under the rays of the Sudarshan Chakra, sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Amagyan Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhievacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare. So we're in Canto 9, and Bhagavatam should be studied systematically or categorically. Prabhupada mentions this in the introduction of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Srila Prabhupada says that we should study Bhagavatam categorically, systematically, because it was spoken systematically. Bhagavatam is thematic. Right? There are themes. There's a reason why it's spoken the way it is. Sometimes it seems disorientating when you study Bhagavatam. You know, when we study, we sometimes think, why is this being spoken? Why is that? There's no chronology within Bhagavatam. You know, sometimes you're speaking about the beginning of the universe in second canto, the creation, third canto, the creation, then suddenly it disappears into another part of the universe, another time. So the time frames are not chronological, right? There's movement throughout the Bhagavatam. It goes back and forth. This story, that story it moves around. Different yugas are there. And even though that may feel disorientating sometimes, it's actually systematic. Right? There's a reason why everything is spoken categorically, one after another, and after another. So Bhagavatam is thematic. It was not spoken randomly or spontaneously, but it was spoken systematically. When Shukadev Goswami spoke it to Maharaj Parikshit, it was just manifesting again. Bhagavatam always exists. Just like Bhagavad Gita always exists. Sometimes it's mentioned, in the Gita itself it mentions, the message was lost. And because it's lost, then Krishna has to speak it again. But it's always existing. Bhagavatam is always there. Bhagavad Gita is always there. Vrindavan Dham is always there. Mayapur Dham is always there. Sometimes they're manifest or unmanifest. Prakat, aprakat. But always these things exist. So, it is thematic, and sometimes within the Bhagavatam we hear similar kind of lessons or pastimes being repeated. Because now we're at the 9th canto and we've studied it systematically. And Prabhupada says in the introduction, you should be a God-realized soul after studying the first 9 cantos, so that when you get to the 10th canto, you will understand Krishna as he is. Right? So if you study it properly, the Bhagavatam, when you get to canto 10, you should understand Krishna correctly. And Prabhupada said you should be a God-realized soul by studying the first 9 cantos systematically. So we're just about to go into the 10th canto. It'll just be a few months away. We'll enter into the 10th canto. And all of us should be God-realized souls. So hands up if you're a God-realized soul. Okay, so what do we do? Do we go back and start Canto 1 again? No? At least in our personal study we should do that. We should go back and study it again. Prabhupada actually says you should not go past Canto 1 and 2 if you're attached to illicit sex. Right? If you haven't given up material sex desire, you should not progress past Canto 1 and 2. We should just stay there and study again and again and again until our hearts become cleansed. Then we move on, and then we get to Canto 9. So now we're in Canto 9, and we're about to go into Canto 10, but we have to understand Krishna properly, right? Even when Sutta Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisharanya, not all of them were actually realized completely, because it mentions in the commentaries of the Acharyas in Canto 10, when they got to the Rasa Panchajaya, Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, in Canto 10, Sutta Goswami noticed that some of the sages were smirking when they were hearing Krishna's pastimes with the gopis beginning to be described, which means they still had some contamination in their heart, right? Some lust in their heart, because they couldn't understand that Krishna's pastimes are divya. They are not jamma, kama, chame, divyam, right? You have to understand that Krishna's appearance, his lila, his activities in this world, they're divya. They are not material, they are spiritual. That's why we study Bhagavatam systematically, so that when we get to the 10th canto, we understand, no, we're dealing with God. Right? We're dealing with Krishna's pastimes. We're actually dealing with Swayam Bhagavan. We're dealing with the original form of God. And his pastimes are different to the other incarnations. Because Krishna is in the mood of Dear Lalita, which means he's just being playful. He's just enjoying. Right? Even some of his lila appears from a material point of view to be immoral. Right? If you go out and meet someone else's wife, right, in the middle of the night, that's immoral. Right? If we hear one of the devotees in our community is having an affair with someone else's wife, right, they'll be chastised, right? Because it's inappropriate, immoral behavior. Yet Krishna does, he goes out with multiple peoples, apparently, they are married to someone else, He goes and meets them in the forest. So he appears to be immoral, and he gets criticized for that by mundane moralists. They say, oh, Krishna is enjoying with the wives of others. But if you read in the Krishna book, Prabhupada nicely explains there's nothing immoral about Krishna, because we all belong to Krishna. We're all married to Krishna, actually, right? Because he is Purush, we are Prakriti, we're meant to be enjoyed by him. There is nothing immoral about what Krishna did, right? From an external point of view or a material point of view, you may say, okay, Krishna looks immoral, but no, he is not. So that's why we have to study these first 9 cantos properly, so we understand properly when we get to Canto 10 who Krishna is. Because the Bhagavatam, right, the Paribhasa Sutra, the governing verse of Bhagavatam says, Ete chamsa kala pumsa, Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam. So what is the, who and what is the subject matter of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam? It is Swayam Bhagavan. It is Krishna, right? There are other incarnations, and when you read Bhagavatam, every pastime in every canto is just supporting that one premise that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why in Canto 7 is there an elaborate description of Lord Nrsingadev? Why in Canto 8 do we hear about Mohini Murti? Why in Canto 9 do we hear about Lord Ramachandra? Because it's all supporting that Krishna is the source of all of these other incarnations. That's how we understand it. Right? So everything in the Bhagavatam is supporting that, so that we can understand Krishna's position properly. So the Bhagavatam is thematic and has different themes. Now, one of the themes is coming up in this pastime, which is coming up again, is the pastime of Durvasa and Ambarish. What has Durvasa done in this pastime? What did he do? What's that? To a devotee, yeah. And what do we call that? Vaishnava aparadha, or sadhu ninda. You have offended a devotee. This is one of the themes of the Bhagavatam. It comes up again and again and again in different cantos. Right? You go back to Canto 4. Who offended who? Daksha Jagya. And who did Daksha offend? Lord Shiva. And what happened? Yeah, lost his head. Hands up if you'd like to lose your head. It's not a very pleasant experience, right? Gone, right? Yeah. Daksha. Lord Shiva was angry. So this means be careful. Rupa Goswami says this in the Mathura Dham Mahatmya. A very nice pastime is there, where it describes that Rupa Goswami, and you know, Rupa Goswami, we're Rupa Nuga Vaishnavas, right? Rupa Goswami is like the head of our sampradaya practically, you know, besides Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. We're said to be followers of Sri Rupa Goswami, right? Every chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita says Rupa Raghunatha Pade, right? I'm falling at the lotus feet of Rupa and Raghunath Das Goswami. So even Rupa Goswami, who's the most elevated Vaishnava, pure devotee, you know, he was meditating, chanting his japa. You know, you've heard the pastime, and then one devotee came and offered obeisances, and Rupa Goswami was smiling, and he laughed a little bit, because in his meditation he's observing Krishna's pastimes, and there was something humorous in the pastime with Radha and Krishna, and he was smiling. And the devotee offered obeisances, and he thought, oh, Rupa Goswami is laughing at me. So he felt a little bit offended. So then he got up, he went away. Rupa Goswami, then his meditation broke. And then he opened his eyes, he thought, how come I can't meditate on Krishna? And he tried to go back into and he couldn't get back into the pastime. So he went to Sanatana Goswami, and he said, I was chanting, but then my meditation is broke, and I can't get back in. I don't know what's taking place. And then Sanatana Goswami said, maybe you offended a devotee. Someone's taken offense. So Rupa Goswami went to every devotee. I believe it was around Radhakund, around that area. There were many devotees living around that area. So then Rupa Goswami went to every devotee and offered he said, Prabhuji, if I've committed an offense to you, please forgive me. Everyone said, no, there's no offense. Nothing has happened. And he got to one devotee who had a little bit of a deformity or some sort of a physical something there was there, some sort of disability or something was there. So then Rupa Goswami came to him and he said, oh Prabhu, have I committed some offense? And he said, well, I came to you the other day and I went to offer obeisances to you and you laughed at me. And Rupa Goswami said, oh no, I wasn't laughing at you, I'm sorry. He said, please forgive me. He bowed down, he offered obeisances and the devotee forgave him. Right? So then he could go back into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. He could meditate once again. So then he went back to Sanatana Goswami and he said, I found out what took place. I went there, I found the devotee as you instructed, and I've begged forgiveness, he's forgiven me, and now my spiritual life is back on track. And then it's mentioned about that pastime, and it says, be very careful about causing ill feelings in the hearts of any devotees. Right? This is the instruction. That's what's being spoken. That's why Vaishnava aparadha is brought up again and again and again throughout Bhagavatam. Because it is something that we do. We commit offenses to devotees. Sometimes we do it. Intentionally or unintentionally, but sometimes we do it. You know, I know myself in my life, I'm a jester. You know, I joke a lot, right? You know, I always make jokes and, you know, devotees like. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it backfires. I say something, you know, and I go over the line. You know, I don't mean to, but I go over the line. And then the devotee gets upset. Takes it the wrong way. You know, it's happened to me a number of times. And then I have to go to the devotee and say, you know, Prabhu, I'm sorry. You know, I didn't mean it. You know, I didn't mean, you know, I meant the joke, but not like not in a harmful or spiteful way. You know, I wasn't trying to offend you. And, you know, sometimes you have to offer obeisances. You have to bow down to the devotee, or at least you have to say, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. You know, and the devotee might say, you know, don't do it again, or, you know, you always go too far, or something, you know, whatever it is. But you have to, beg forgiveness. And none of us are so advanced that we can't beg forgiveness from someone else. Even sometimes you might offend a junior devotee, someone who's less advanced than you, who's less senior than you. But if they're upset, you have to go and beg forgiveness. You have to eat humble pie, and you have to go to them and you say, you know, Prabhuji, please, you know, forgive me. Mataji, please forgive me. You know, sometimes we do. We commit offense, aparadha. So that's why it is mentioned here within Bhagavatam, again and again and again, canto after canto. It's preparing us for Canto 10, because we're very close to Canto 10, right? And you cannot enter into Krishna's pastimes properly if you're committing offenses to devotees. Right? You have to be very careful. That's why this subject matter is brought up again and again and again. Be careful of Vaishnava aparadha. And when you study Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually it's like a commentary on Bhagavatam, actually. Right? It's all the philosophy of Bhagavatam. Like, if you take Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavatam is an explanation of Bhagavad Gita. You know, where does Krishna finish Bhagavad Gita? Savadaman, parijajam, mamekam sharanam braja. All right? Reject all these other things and just surrender unto me. And where does Bhagavatam begin? Right? It says, give up kaitava dharma. Right? Reject these cheating paths and just focus on service to Krishna. And then there are so many explanations of how to serve Krishna within Bhagavatam. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita, everything which is in Bhagavatam, particularly 10th canto, that is brought out and elaborated upon, those sentiments within the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is specifically mentioned, you have to be careful of committing which offense of all the offenses? It is called Hati Mata. Hati Mata means mad elephant, right? Right? Have you been close to an elephant? You know, Mayapur, we used to pat the elephant, but I think they've taken them away now. You know, we used to pat the elephants, right? But you get next to them, they're big. They're big. So imagine a big one. I've never been next to a big one, but you know, some of them are big, you know, they're right up. You get next to a big one, right? It's scary. And then imagine he goes mad and you're close by. Like, it's very scary. So Lord Chaitanya likens offending devotees to Hati Mata offense. It's dangerous. If you want to derail your spiritual life, offend the devotees. If you don't want to go back to Godhead, offend the devotees. Right? If you don't want to enter into the depths of the 10th canto and understand Krishna's pastimes, offend the devotees. That's why the Bhagavatam keeps saying, be very careful about offending the devotees all the way through. So we have to be careful of aparadha. There are different types of aparadhas we're taught about. What are the different types of aparadhas we have to be careful of? The different categories. Nam aparadha. Right? How many nam aparadhas are there? 10. Yeah. And we say it's also an offense to be inattentive, because in one list, inattention is in there, right? In Harinam Chintamani, it's actually included in the 10, but then in Nectar of Devotion, it's not included. So then we say also to be inattentive. Actually, Bhaktivedanta Thakur mentions that inattention while chanting is the cause of the other 10 offenses. Right? That's how important it is. If you're not chanting attentively, you will, or you could, offend devotees, disobey the order of the spiritual master, think the glories of the holy name to be imagination. You could commit all those offenses if you don't chant attentively. That's why attentive chanting is the most important thing that we have to focus on while chanting the holy name of Krishna. So we have nam aparadha. What other types of aparadha do we have? Seva aparadha. Yeah, seva aparadha. Rupa Goswami gives, chapter 8, Nectar of Devotion, 64 seva aparadhas. What are some of the seva aparadhas? What's mentioned in chapter 8? What are some of them? Right? Bowing down on one hand. Seva aparadha. No, you bow down on two hands. Not one hand. Yeah, devotees do it all the time. You've got your japa beads and you do this. You know, like that. That's not proper. Right? There's many things that mentioned. These are seva aparadhas. So you have to be careful of them. So we have nam aparadha. We have seva aparadha. Someone said dham aparadha. That's true. Yeah. When we take devotees to the holy dham, we read there are 10 offenses to the holy dham. So you have to be aware of those offenses. Otherwise, you will commit offenses. Then there's Vaishnava aparadha, which is being spoken of here, Vaishnava. And then there's Jana aparadha, or Jiva aparadha, which means just to offend living entities. Just to offend the living entities. Even if someone's not a devotee, sometimes you might offend a non-devotee. Right? Or you might offend a cow. Or you might offend a peacock. Or you might offend an ant. Or you might offend a mosquito. You know, one time one devotee, it might have even been Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I think, he went into like a kitchen, I think he was going to cook for Prabhupada, and there's lots of mosquitoes. They start killing all the mosquitoes. Prabhupada said, no, do not kill. He said, only if they attack you, then you can kill. But if they're just, you should not kill. So we do commit offenses to plants. Sometimes you just pull out a plant or something like that, right? Kill. It means if they're weeds and you're trying to grow something in the garden and you pull out the weed, it's not an offense because we have to be practical as well. But it means if you just, actually in, it was Dallas or Houston, Srila Prabhupada was there. He came to the temple. He came back the next year And there was one tree which was very close to the temple, growing very close, and the devotees had pulled out, and Prabhupada said, "Why did you pull out? Why did you pull out the tree? You've just taken him." You see, like in India, sometimes they go around the trees. Right? Even in Australia, even down here in Albert Park, down Dang Street, further down, right? You see some of the trees are coming right out on the road, right? And you have to go around them. No? It actually says in Manu Samhita, if you kill an old tree, it's a great sin. You know, the younger tree is not as much of a sin, but if something's very old and established, right, and you haven't got good reason, you just come and knock it down, then it's actually a sin. No, it's pap, it's an offense, jana aparadha. So these are all the different types of offenses. We have to be very careful. So that's why this pastime is being spoken. We have to be careful of committing offenses. Right? Now there are 6 offenses actually, 6 types of Vaishnava aparadhas, which are there. Would you like me to read them? Would you like me to read? No? Okay, one person wants to hear, so I will read for this one person. And the rest of you can listen also. Okay, so 6 types of aparadhas, Vaishnava aparadhas. This is mentioned in the Puranas. We'll go from less serious to more serious. Right? So it says, not being happy upon seeing a devotee. That's an offense. You see a devotee, and they come, and you look down like, you know, have you done that before, or someone's done it to you? It's not very pleasant, but we do it to each other. You know, sometimes you see a devotee, and you're just like, oh, we all know you. We know. So you're walking across the courtyard, and there's only one devotee coming, and you're like, you know, like it's kind of obvious what's taking place, and that devotee might feel a little bit of pain. You know, I've had it happen to me, and I've done it to others as well. It's not good. It's not good. You know, it doesn't make me feel very good when someone does it to me. You know, you see someone, you haven't seen them for a long time, you're walking up to them, and they're like, you know, like, you know, and then it becomes uncomfortable, and then, you know, so it's an offense. So be careful. Try not to do that. We're a personalistic movement. Lord Chaitanya says, Trinada pi sunichena tarura pi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtanya hasadahari. There are 4 elements to that verse. Be tolerant like a tree. Right? It actually says be more tolerant than a tree. Why more tolerant than a tree? Because a tree cannot object. Right? When you do something to a tree, it can't do anything. But when you do something to a devotee, it can, or when someone does something to us, we can object, but we should be more tolerant than the tree. Right? So that's one of the elements. Second one is more humble than a blade of grass. A grass is stepped on, and he just gets back up. Right? We have to be more tolerant. Right? If someone steps on us, which happens, sometimes, you know, devotees, they step on us. So when they do, you know, you have to be more humble than grass. You can protest, but you don't. You just stay very low and humble. And it's not easy to do. It's very easy to speak all of these things, but it's not easy to actually put it into practice. Right? But Lord Chaitanya says you have to be that humble. You have to be that tolerant. Offer respect to others, and don't expect respect for yourself. It almost seems like that's impossible to actually imbibe that consciousness. Not expecting respect. Hands up if you don't expect any respect. Right? We all do. We all like it. You know, we won the marathon. You know, we kind of enjoy like when everyone goes Jai and, you know, the mridangas, we kind of like it. We do enjoy it. Right? So don't expect respect. Okay, if you get it, you know, be humble. Right? But if you don't get it, that's okay as well. But most of us are not like that. And always offer respect to others. Right? We're not very good at this sometimes. I know I'm not very good at it sometimes. Right? You should offer respect to another. Right? Even when you're not getting anything in return, but you still be respectful. Right? It's actually a very advanced state of consciousness. Right? It's something I'm still trying to work on. You know, just be respectful to others, even if you don't get anything back. right? Even if they're not recognizing you or glorifying you, but you still be respectful. We're very much, our consciousness is very much vanik. Vanik means merchant. I'll give something to you if you give something to me. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. We're very much like that in life, in our relationships, and with devotees as well. I'll be nice to you and I'll glorify you, but it's only when you're doing it to me. Right? When you're not doing it to me, I cool off. Right? I'm not so interested anymore. Right? So Lord Chaitanya says we have to imbibe those 4 elements of humility. If you do that, you won't commit aparadha. Right? That's why it is said, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says, we should wear that verse around our neck like the Kantimala. Right? Trinadapi, we should be in that consciousness all the time. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, says that verse is the Siddha Pranali verse for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. You will become fully Krishna conscious if you perfect the consciousness of that verse. It's such an important verse. It's one of the most important verses in our lineage. Trinadapi Sunichena. So of the 4, in the commentary Bhaktivedanta Thakur describes, on Shikshastika, of the 4 elements of that verse, which element is the most important? Which is the most important? More tolerance, humility, offering respect, not expecting for oneself. Which is the most important? Someone knows? Anyone knows? Right? It is, right, not expecting the respect. No, it's not. It's actually always giving respect. Right? That's the most important element of the 4. Right? Always giving respect. Right? Even when you're not getting it yourself, but you always give it. If you do that, you will perfect that verse. You will perfect your consciousness. And then, Kirtaniya Sadahari, then you'll always chant. How much time do we waste during our chanting in our mind thinking of things which are not related to Krishna? A lot of our chanting is just taken up with, oh, that devotee said this to me yesterday. I hope they don't distribute so many books tomorrow. We think all sorts of things in our mind. Our mind gets caught up in all that. Why? Because we don't follow what's in that verse. Because if you're following what's in that verse, you will chant all the time. Your mind will stay fixed on Krishna. Your false ego will dissolve. But if you don't, then... So then, if you're not happy when you see a devotee, that's an aparadha. Second is, you become angry with devotees. Right? You become angry with the devotee. Be very careful, right, about being angry with the devotee. Right? If you're going to be angry with a devotee, you have to have very good reason. And you have to be in the right position. Sometimes the senior devotees, we have to become angry. To get, hey, come on, get moving. You have to shake devotees out of there. But we have to be very careful. Prabhupada was the perfect Acharya. He showed us. Prabhupada would become angry, next moment he was just completely detached again. So if you're going to use anger in Krishna service, you actually have to be elevated. Because if you use it and you don't use it properly, you'll commit offense. So you have to be very careful how we use anger in Krishna service. The next level is not glorifying the devotee. Right? When the devotee has done something glorious, right, something which clearly deserves glorification, and you don't say anything because you're envious, right, and you can't handle putting someone in a superior position, that's an aparadha. Right? A devotee did something very good, and you don't say it. We should be glorifying the devotees constantly. Oh, Prabhu, well done. You distributed so many books. You washed this pot very nicely. Right? Because sometimes you see the pots, just like we had the retreat on the weekend. The devotees came down to the farm, some of the boys, and they cooked in the kitchen, and this is some feedback. They didn't wash everything very nicely. And now because I've got a cooking retreat this weekend, and we've got non-devotees coming, and they're going to be in our kitchen all weekend, and now we have to re-wash a lot of things because they're greasy or not done properly. That's some feedback, and some of you are watching on television right now. Please wash the pots properly. So, we should be glorifying all the devotees all the time, right? But if they don't do the service properly, say, Prabhu, please do the service properly. Right? This is Krishna's service. You're doing this for Krishna. Everything we do should be done to the highest level. Right? Should be done to a good level, because we're doing it for Krishna ultimately. So if you don't wash the pot properly, it means, do you care about Krishna's pots? Do you care about Krishna's kitchen? The kitchen, the kitchen actually belongs to who? Srimati Radharani. Would you leave a greasy bucket in Radharani's kitchen? No, but devotees do it. They do it. They don't mop the floor properly. I'll send a list to what was not done. But things were not done properly, right? But we should glorify the devotees. That's the point. But I'm pointing out things. Sometimes, senior devotees, sometimes we have to say things. Otherwise, devotees don't improve. But generally, we should. If things are done well, then we say, yeah, very nice. Do it. Next is being envious or hating the devotee. Right? How does envy come out? In the mind, in the words, right, and in the actions. We become envious of the other devotees. And then in the mind, because in the mind it's there, and then in our words we say things to bring the devotees down. We should be lifting the devotees up. Right? Even if we chastise the devotee, it's only to bring him up, that's all. It's done with good intent. Right? But if we're dealing with the devotee, we should not be envious. We should not speak envious. And sometimes we do, like behind each other's back. We all say things about each other. Like devotees always say, Kesava eats too much. Right? I know everyone says that behind my back. That's not very good. Actually, I do eat too much, so it's okay. You can say those things about me. But we all say these things behind each other's back. It's not very good, actually. It means there's envy in the heart when we criticize each other unnecessarily. And even worse, when you take an action out of envy. You actually obstruct someone's service or something like that. That's very envious. That's a big offense, actually, to the devotee. And then the next, blaspheming the devotee. Right? Blaspheming them, behind their back or to their, saying something which is clearly out of envy and clearly not true or for the benefit of the devotee, and we just blaspheme them. Right? That's a big offense. That's why it says in the morning, the first offense against the holy name is sadhu ninda, to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. Right? And then the sixth offense, which is the biggest one, is to kill the devotee. Right? Prabhujis, Matajis, please don't kill the devotees. Sometimes you might feel like it. That's different. That's different. It says in Kali Yuga, we don't get the reaction for what goes on in the mind. Because if you got the reaction for some of your thoughts, you would be dead. Because sometimes in your mind you might think, I wish this devotee would fall off the bridge. Well, I don't know what goes in your mind, but sometimes in the mind you might think things, right? But if you ever kill a devotee, your spiritual life is finished. Finished. You will go into a dark place. Actually, what was his name? Krishna was doing the rasa, Shankachuda. You know that demon, Shankachuda? He came and he took the gopis away. Krishna and Balaram were doing Rasa Lila. He came. So Krishna said to Balaram, protect the gopis, I'll go and get him. So Krishna went and got him and grabbed him, put him on the ground, and then went right? Punched him, and then again, boom, just beat him to death. And Krishna actually said to him when he was getting him, he said, "My only regret is I can't kill you more than once." Right? I can't kill you more than once. Just smashed him. Finally just smashed the life out of him. Right? Don't you touch my devotees. Huh? So if you harm one of Krishna's, if you actually killed one of Krishna's devotees, you're finished. Right? It'll take you lifetimes. You know, Krishna will just send you repeatedly to suffering. So the point is, I mean, I know no one's going to kill a devotee. I know none of us would do that, but it's just showing us, right, how careful we have to be, right? So it is said in Mathura Dham Mahatmya, it is said, be very careful. Rupa Goswami writes, be very careful not to create ill feelings in the hearts of the other devotees. You know, if the other devotees feel ill about us, don't feel good about us, you know, they might not say anything, you know, but if they feel distant and they're not happy with us, that's of great concern, because that means you're not going to go back to Krishna. You can't go back to Krishna if the other devotees are upset with you. So if you feel that, sometimes I feel it, like I feel the other devotees are not happy, then you have to become humble, and you have to go to the devotees and say, you know, Prabhuji's, I'm sorry. You know, and try to receive the blessings of the devotees. The more blessings we have from more devotees, particularly advanced devotees, the more we'll advance in spiritual life. Right? That's the way it works. Because when Krishna sees, because Krishna knows the heart of every living entity, when Krishna sees the devotees are happy with you, then Krishna will bless you. Even though Krishna can see all your faults, but he says, oh, everyone likes this devotee, everyone is happy with this devotee's service, Krishna will bring you. That's why, if we get the blessings of the devotees, that's the easiest way to advance in spiritual life, in Krishna consciousness. So we have to act in a way that we always get the blessings of the devotees, as much as we can. Which means, what's the best way to get the blessings of the devotees? To serve the devotees. And what's the best way to serve the devotees? Help them become Krishna conscious. Right? Help them in their Krishna consciousness. You know, just like a few years back, Bhurajan Prabhu was staying at the farm. He had a retreat and then everyone left and he stayed there. And I went to see him. I was coming to Melbourne to teach. So I went to say goodbye. I said, you know, Prabhu. And it was my birthday on that day. And I said, oh, you know, I'm going to Melbourne to teach. It's my birthday. And Bhurajan Prabhu said, very good. He said, on your birthday, you should serve the other devotees. And the best service is to give them Bhagavatam. So that is the best service. When we help other devotees become Krishna conscious, then we get the blessings of the other devotees. Yeah? And if you can't give Bhagavatam class, like if it's not your nature, not everyone has the nature to speak on Bhagavatam and do all these services, then you do humble menial services to the devotees. You know, bring them a glass of water, right? Do some seva for the devotees. Always be looking. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, said every day we should do 5 menial services to the devotees. You know, when I was living in the Brahmacharya ashram, just down here many years ago, when I was happy, that was, to see if my wife is watching. You know, many years ago, you know, when I was happy and I was living in the every morning between 4:30 and 8:30 in the morning, I used to try to do 5 menial services to the devotees. You know, bring the mat for the devotee to sit on, serve the charanamrita, take the ghee lamp around, you know, bring a mat for the, you know, whatever it is. I can't remember how I did it, but I used to do 5, you know, menial services in the morning. If everyone gets into that competitive spirit, right, the temple flourishes. Everyone's competing to serve each other, right? That's why we call, Prabhupada says, that's why we call each other Prabhu, right? Because we see each other as the master, right? If we're all in the mood that I'm the Prabhu, right? The temple, and some temples, they may become like that. When everyone thinks they're their Prabhu, it becomes problematic, right? But when everyone thinks, right, you're the Prabhu, then the mood in the temple, in the community becomes very sweet. And actually Melbourne has a very sweet community because devotees are in that mood of serving. So I'll stop here and I'll see if there's any questions or comments, what we discussed today. Any other questions? Is the mic working?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, you mentioned about the different types of aparadha, like the Jana aparadha, Vaishnava aparadha. So I'd like to ask, it's easy to follow outside, like to be nice with the living entities, serve the devotees, and try not to commit any offenses to the devotees. But at home with siblings, we fight all day long, say ill words to each other, and that just is like a natural thing that we do. And when we try to apply these things at home, it becomes really fanatic and artificial. So do we get these offenses for doing, like saying ill words to each other, fighting with each other?
With family members. Yeah. With the siblings, brothers and sisters, husband and wife. That's the best one. Husband and wife, like the things we say to each other and even do to each other, it's special. It's its own tattva, it's its own category, like that. And with the brothers and sisters, I do things. And the question is there some reaction to the aparadha? The answer is yes, there is some. It's not as serious between the husband and wife, because the husband and wife, they do all sorts of things. They say all sorts of things. And their siblings. But we have to remember we are devotees. We do put on tilak, we do wear kanti mala, we are devotees, so there is something. I think it's less. That's my experience, it's less, because I think if we got the actual reactions, we'd probably all be in wheelchairs right now. So I think, where it's less, because Krishna understands. Chanakya says, when the husband and wife are fighting, sometimes in the sky there is a cloud, and the cloud makes thunder sound, but there's no rain. So husband and wife fighting is like that. Right, it's just some noise. Everyone goes, oh yeah. It's not doesn't mean anything, just some noise. So sometimes you hear the grihastas fighting, and everyone goes, like that. We don't take it seriously because that's just what they do. So that is, you're not getting the full reaction. I think Krishna just says, we're not taking that seriously, but there is something, because it's not appropriate, So Prabhupada says, after Mangalarti, we offer obeisances to all the Vaishnavas. Why do we do that? Prabhupada says that gets rid of all the offenses from yesterday. So that's why every morning, we all say, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, because they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. So we all do that. So Prabhupada said that means offences, unknowingly or knowingly you've committed, that will clear that. So maybe at home you can do that a few times a day. Before you go to sleep, and then when you get up in the morning. And probably after you shower, and then, after you play, and then before lunch, and a few times. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the nice slide. I would like to ask, why is Parshuram's committing offense to the devotees by killing them? So how is that not offense?
Parashuram killed Kshatriyas. It didn't say devotees, it said Kshatriyas. He killed Kshatriyas.
Okay.
Yeah. Parashuram was killing people who needed to be killed. If you kill someone who needs to be killed, there's no offense. Like it says in Bhagavad Gita, in the Prabhupada says in the purport, if someone tries to take your wife, or set fire to your house, or attach you with a weapon, you're allowed to kill them. That's okay. But even in this day and age, if someone did one of those things and you killed them, you'd probably go to jail, because the whole system is upside down now. But sometimes you are allowed to kill someone. But next time, before you kill someone, make sure you read the list. Make sure it's the right. Because otherwise it's a big problem. Any other question? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki?